Hello everyone. Today we're going to code a little JavaScript function which will allow us to preview images as thumbnails before storing them inside of a database. So before that happens, we grab them with JavaScript and we just display them on the DOM. It's going to look like this without the form or anything, just the logic is going to look like this. I'm just going to code the HTML in JavaScript today and you guys can implement it inside of your projects. So you can see I uploaded 3 images. We see the 3 previews below. Great, so let's go to our project. I am using Rails for this project, but you guys can use anything you want. I'm using Rails because it already has Webpacker and it's just much easier for me. But anyways, I'm going to code it all in HTML inside of my home view. Even the JavaScript, I'm going to put it inside of script tags to make it just easier for everyone to follow along according to whatever you're using. So first step obviously is make our input type as a file and give it an ID. My input, let's keep it simple. Open our script tags. We also want actually a div tag with an ID of previews. And this is where we're actually going to put the images once we upload them. We'll not upload them. Once we select them, we want them to be previewed inside of this div. So first step is obviously grab the input so that we can start working on it. So we will grab it by its ID. My input. All right. So what we want to do is we're going to add an event listener because the logic behind this is basically when maybe I should start my server first. The logic is once the user selects his images, so clicks on the button and selects the images, we want to be able to run the logic. Otherwise, there's no point. And if there is no input, then there is also no point to run this logic. So if there is an input, we will run it. And the logic obviously is we are going to listen to a click, but rather than a click, we're actually going to listen to a change on the DOM on this particular node. So whenever something happens here, we want to be able to run the logic. So on the input, we will add an event listener. On change, we want to run the following callback. And the callback will be preview my image or images, because we are actually also going to allow it to preview several ones. Okay, so now we just want to call we want to code this callback function because we don't have it yet. So preview my images. It's going to take a parameter. So it's going to be the current input. And this is what's going to happen inside of it. So again, similar to here, we want to check if there are actually files in it. Otherwise, there is no point of running it. So if there are files and if the file is the first one, because you'll see later that it actually gives us back an array of files. If the file is the first one, we want to call a JavaScript method. And don't freak out, guys, but this is just JavaScript syntax, so you can Google it and you'll have all the documentation about it. So it's called file reader, and as it says it just allows you to read a file. It has a little bit more to it than that. We'll see it at the end, how we actually want to read it. And so on load, we want to call this function. So on load, this is what we want to do. So now we can actually code the real logic behind it. And the first thing we want to do is grab this event's current target results. So let's call it image path and event dot current target dot result. Okay. Okay, well, once we finish it, I will console log as much as possible and take you through the code so that it makes sense. And if it doesn't already. And we also want to grab this div here that we gave an ID to before, so previews, and we will set it equal to a variable called previews. Alright. Why are we doing this? Because we want to insert the images inside of that current div tag. So last step of, well, not really the last step, but the last HTML part would be to actually make a template literal of the image tag that we want to insert. So it's going to be an image, obviously. We will give it a class later that I didn't do yet, which will be called image preview, just to give it a width and maybe a little margin. Now the src is, as you might have guessed, going to be the image path that we assigned here before. We grabbed it and we assigned it to image path. So we can simply interpolate it here, image path, and that is it actually. So we can close our template literal. And so we are giving it a class, and just the source is the link of the image path that we grabbed before storing it to the database. So, nope. What happened here? All right. So now what we want to do is insert this inside of the previews tag. So previews.insert, you can do that many ways. I'll do it with insert adjacent HTML. And this method takes two arguments, so the position and the node that we actually, well, the string, it takes a string that we actually want to insert in the DOM. And so I want to insert the image that we created right before. All right, one last step, which is after the if statement. So we want to be able to say how we are going to read the reader, right? So this here, or this actually, we want to say how we're reading it. So reader.read as data URL. Again, this is just JavaScript syntax. I found it on the net by reading. So the input files and which one it is, again, it's the first one. We're only uploading one file. And that's actually it for the logic. So we can go ahead and try it. Or actually before, let's give a class on my style sheet. The class that we didn't do, so image preview, was it? Or image preview. We give it a class of, so maybe a width of 200 pixels and margin of 10 pixels and 10 pixels. And let's see what happens. So if I upload an image, nothing happens. Now why is that? Maybe let's see if we have a typo or something. Input, yep, add, well, you guys probably don't have this. Let's try it again. Yeah, cool. So you can see that by selecting an image, it listens to the change, it sees that there is a change, and it runs our callback and displays the image. But now, just a little bonus, what happens if I actually try to upload 3 images? Well, nothing happens. And why is that? Because first of all, the HTML doesn't know that this input can take more than one value. And second, our JavaScript is not prepared to actually display more than one value. So we want to repeat this process for how many values there are. So the first step is allow this field, this input, to take multiple just by saying multiple true. And if you refresh, you can see that now it becomes choose files. So you can upload more than one. You can select more than one. And if we do so, still nothing happens. It says that there are 3 files, so it worked, but we can't preview them. and this is where we need to edit our JavaScript. So an easy fix to not make it more complicated would be to just create, for example, a counter variable, set it equal to 0, and run a loop over this if statement, so that according to how many times how many files are there, we will just run this loop accordingly. So as long as counter is smaller than the file's length, so the array of input files, as long as it's smaller, we want to keep running this loop. So let's put all of this inside of the loop. And now let's see what happens. Just take it step by step. So let's see what happens. The loop is working fine. All right. And if I choose 3 files, my computer is very slow. Ooh, my bad. It's not my computer, it's me. Forgot to increment the counter, otherwise it's an infinite loop. So counter plus equals 1. I'm just going to restart my browser. Localhost. Alright, sorry. So if I select 3 images, I get 3 times the same image, although I have 3 files and I made a loop, but I still get 3 times the same images displayed. And that is simply because we are telling our reader to display the first one, so the number 0 on the array, the index at index 0. But we wanted to display the counter, because the counter the first time is going to be 0, but if there's another image, it's going to be 1 the next time, and so on. So now if we try it again with the 3 same images, kaboom! We have it all loaded with each image properly. And it works even if you only have 1 image. Obviously the loop will only run once. So that is it, guys. You can implement it on your project. I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment and leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.